Okay, we're counting down in 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome back, and here we go. Our first dollar comic book reads segment. This segment is also available on video on YouTube. It's the only segment of the show that's on video, so if you want to pop over to the Dollar Box Reads YouTube channel, give it a look, give it a like, say hello, and that's when I just said hello to you, and you could take a look at it. So as announced earlier on, the 3 comic book issues this week are Evil Among the Darkstars. The title's just called The Darkstars. It's by DC. It was published in January 1993. That's the first title. The second title is Crystar, Crystal Warrior, number 8. And there's some pretty cool, significant things about this title that we'll get to in a minute. That one was by Marvel. And then another Marvel title, and this is the one we'll wrap up with, which is Ghost Rider number 19, published in November of 1991. So those are all the 3 titles. Let's get right to it. So the first one that I told you about is Darkstars number 4. And I don't remember exactly when I bought this title. It was a while back. And it's been in the box, but it has an interesting sort of history. So just in case you don't know, this one was published in January of 1993. So here's what was happening in January of 1993. The Velvet Divorce. Man, that sounds very Kardashian. No Kardashian divorce, I guess would sound very velvety. The Velvet Divorce was when Czechoslovakia broke up. It turned into the Czech Republic, and it turned into Slovakia. So I've been to both of those countries, and they're fantastic and have great food and great things to see. So maybe the Velvet Divorce was fantastic for the kids who made... Anyway. Bill Clinton was sworn in as president. Hey, you look pretty good. You want some pie? So he was sworn in as president in January of 93. The 5th largest robbery of a Brinks truck took place in the United States. $7.4 million, which is like, 80, 90 pounds. It's like 40 million Canadian, 60 million Australian, but sounds very Goodfellas-like. You just see Pesci and Ray Liotta and those guys swiping a truck, hitting them and throwing the driver out. Maybe it's something like that. Anyway, it was the largest robbery of that kind, 5th largest robbery of that kind in 93. And on a more serious note, that is the year in the United States that the first World Trade Center bombing took place in February of 93. So those were some of the things that were kind of happening in 93. Darkstars, I don't know if it was a spin-off or what it was, but this is number 4, so I was catching up to it with it very late. This issue was conceived by Michael Jan Friedman, or it might be Michael Jan Friedman, probably Michael Jan Friedman, Travis Charest, Scott Hanna, and let me also tell you the letterer was Bob Pinaha, and the colorist was Juliana Ferreder. I hope I'm saying her name right. Anyway, Michael Jan Friedman is an author of many things, including Star Wars, Star Trek. He did the new Jedi Order series, Nightfall 1, Jedi Storm. It was part of a 3-part series, which was eventually canceled. He did some work on After Earth, Aliens, some nonfiction. He did the Star Trek Federation Guide in '97, and he did all of the Darkstars actually from number 1 to 38. He also did some Batman, some Flash, Green Lantern. He's a pretty significant artist. As noted in Wikipedia, he was New York City born, which you'll find is a theme with a lot of the authors and creators we'll be talking about. 60 books, fiction and nonfiction, more than half of which are licensed tie-in products to the Star Trek franchise. So that's him. Travis Charest, I hope he's Canadian. I'm going to get his name wrong. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but he's an inker and a painter. He's actually a pretty sought-after cover artist. But he did this one in very much the 90s style, I think, with the way that the line work is done. Very Jim Lee, Rob Liefeld-ish. And very well done. That's to say, it's not a bad. It definitely was a 90s style. Charest worked on Darkstars, Wildcats, X-Men, The Golden Age. He's also worked on cover work for Star Wars and other things for Dark Horse Comics. He was born the same year I was. He was born in '69. He was born in Edmonton, Alberta, Canada. It says he grew up on the likes of Mike Mignola, Adam Hughes, and Brian Boland, one of my favorites from Judge Dredd 2000. And the inker is a guy named Scott Hanna. And the interesting thing about Scott Hanna is he has founded something called the Arts and Fashion Institute with someone named Pamela I'm going to say Patek or Tak. It might be silent. I'm thinking it's his girlfriend or his wife. But he's got some heavy hitting here. According to his site, he's inked well over 2,000 or 200 graphic novels for the top two publishers, of course, Marvel and DC. About 23,000 pages of graphic art. He's worked on all the characters of the company, Spider-Man, Iron Man, and so on and so forth. So this inking he does for DC's Darkstars is pretty cool. Anyway, you can check out Scott Hanna. It's an interesting website at artandfashioninstitute.com. He lists his clients as Marvel Entertainment Group, ABC TV's Castle graphic novel, Time Warner Entertainment, of course, DC. TV Guide, Wizard Magazine. He's made plenty of TV appearances and so on and so forth. So that's your creative team. Bob Panaha, didn't have a lot of information on him, but he's pretty well sought after letterer. He's worked on Batman and Bugs Bunny, Comico, one of my favorite comic companies back in the 80s, Comico Christmas Special. He's worked on Elementals, again, another one of my favorites with Bill Willingham, Green Lantern, Grendel, again. So he's actually done some of my favorite titles, Grimjack, so he's done some First Comics work, Robotech, and some Star Trek stuff. So he's the letterer. And then Juliana Ferreter has also done some pretty extensive work in her coloring debut there. She has done some Iron Man, some Darkstars, of course, Daredevil, Conan the Barbarian, and she was an inker on Star Wars Classics and a writer for Suicide Squad in 1987. So that's your creative team for Darkstars number 4. So the title of this is that the Darkstars are apparently a team of something, and they've caught up with the bad guys. Oh, by the title of the book, it's called Star Wars. I'm not kidding. Here, I'm showing it to the video people right there. There it is, Star Wars. And the opening page is pretty cool, pretty dynamic looking opening page. I don't remember what the villain's name is. I read it a few days ago. But he is wreaking havoc, and he's going through these things mentally where he's sort of fighting, doing all these bad things, and it's not a very good thing. And he doesn't want to do all these bad things, I think, but he's doing all the bad things. But the favorite part of this is that his minions are called Starlings, and they have begun to wreak havoc on the city. And the Darkstars, who I'll get to in a second, are trying to stop them from whatever havoc they are wreaking. There's also a subplot with someone whose name is Miss White, and she's been abducted by some guys in glasses and of broad shoulders and the like. The Darkstars are 3 people, and the amazing thing is one of them looks bafflingly like, let me get it over to the camera, like Tom Selleck. Look at that mustache. That is seriously a 1991 porn mustache, if there ever was one. It's brilliant. I mean, it's seriously brilliant. It looks great. I can't tell if he's Tom Selleck or Lee Horsley, but either one is fine. But anyway, the one of them is an alien. I don't know specifically, but he's Darkstar, and then there's the others. The villain's called Evil Star. That's what it was, Evil Star. So I sensed they were setting us up for something here. But anyway, the comic is the Darkstars go in pursuit of the Starlings and Evil Star, and eventually they capture Tom Selleck and they beat him up until eventually the head guy comes in and saves Tom Selleck, and he says something called Dumph Scrad, and it's because he gets hit by a lightning bolt. He's not speaking well, so that's kind of fun. The art is great. It's crystal clear. It's well done. Again, it's in the 90s style, but it's still really well done. I mean, obviously, it's quality stuff. The angles, lots of variation on the pages. Good color too. Actually, I really enjoy how they colored this. The dialogue is definitely comic book dialogue. He's disciplining Tom Selleck here, and he says, "You go off on your own again, and I'll personally feed you to those starling mugglas. You got that?" And Tom Selleck says, "Yeah, I got it. I just got carried away is all." So I'm guessing there's a little New Yorkish in there. Again, the book is colored really well. Some interesting pages. There's some pages 12, 13, and 14 remind me of the opening to Vorpal number 2 that I wrote. And I'd never seen this before, but definitely similar. There's another great line in here. It says, "Now, if you'll excuse me, I must prepare for a staff meeting," which is pretty much every day of my life. And I know a few of you listening to you, it's very much days in your life, but it's always awkward to hear about a staff meeting in a comic books, but there it is. Miss White gets involved earlier in the back, and there's a lot of hijinks with the Darkstars. I could kind of see why they wouldn't have caught on. Their uniforms are kind of indistinct. The Evil Star and the Starlings are definitely like a Motown group of evil. They kind of have all the same qualities and no distinction. Everybody in the book is really masculine. I mean, like super broad shoulders and hair parted on the right and good full hair, square jaws. And again, I think it was probably just the style of the 90s. Maybe, I don't know. But Darkstars number 4, it's if we're saying yay or nay on whether it should be in the dollar bin, probably. Although again, there's some real highlights here, like page 20. I really love the look of page 20. It's got 3 big vertical panels here. I'm showing it to folks on the video. 3 big vertical panels. One of those is an extreme close up on Evil Star, and then some action. And the artist does a really good job with this. Travis Charest, he does a really good job with that page. I really enjoy that. And yeah, if we're saying that it should still be in the dollar bin, probably, but I mean, I haven't caught up on the other 37 issues of this, so maybe there was something indemnifying with all this that there wasn't. So some good stuff there. Some great ads in this one, too. There's a great ad for the Green Arrow Cities done by Mike Grell that I'm going to have to go out and find to see if I can get that one at my actual comic book store, which my comic book store is Augusta Book Exchange, which is right here in Augusta, Georgia. But Green Arrow, 1972, The Good Times Are Just Beginning. It's Green Arrow, The Wonder Year. It's a 4-part miniseries, but I love Mike Grell, former Air Force guy like me, so I'm totally into it. So anyway, Darkstar number 4 was, 24 pages or 32, dummy? Which one is it? I want to say it's 24 with ads and everything. Yep, 24 pages with ads, so pushes it about 28. It was $1.75 back in 1993. And again, some real highlights to it. But if we're saying it should have been in the dollar bin or not, then yeah, maybe not. All right, so let's move on to our next comic, which is actually they're getting better and better. And that is Crystar number 4. There it is for those of you watching on or Crystar number 8. Crystar number 8. And I really dig this cover, and this cover is significant because of, well, I mean, who drew it? Michael Golden is one of my favorite comic book artists ever, and he drew this cover. But if you look at the bottom of the cover, it's got this really cool, and I'll show it on video, but you can look at it too somewhere. It's got this really cool skull on the bottom with horns on it. Looks like either a kind of a demon skull or like a minotaur skull or something like that. Well, that is a skull that was used on a Danzig album. They actually got permission from Golden to use that. And they used that on that album, so that was pretty cool. So Michael Golden did that cover again, one of my favorites. I've got an autograph from him somewhere. Joe Duffy did the plot and script. Ricardo Villamonte did the pencils. Dave Simon did the inks. Janice Chang did the lettering. And Andy Yankus did the coloring. Joe Duffy, if you don't know, is a pretty significant scripter for both titles. Let me just reference back her stuff here. I have it saved here somewhere. Da-da-da-da. Oh, maybe I didn't save hers. All right, well, anyway, she's had a pretty significant run with a lot of folks. There's Joe Duffy. I just had it. There it is. Let me go back. This is an imperfect process on the first one. Who knew it was going to be this way? Joe Duffy is, another New York City, attended Wellesley, great college. She initially had letters published in the Marvel's Letters column. She's been a comic book editor and writer in Marvel since the 80s and Image in the 90s. But again, significant amount of work. She worked on Akira for Marvel, Conan, like Conan O'Brien, Conan, Marvel Superheroes Volumes 2, worked on the Willow graphic novel. She worked on one of my favorite books, Moon Knight, Volume 2, number 5. And of course, I mentioned Crystar. She worked on all 11 issues. Now, there were only 11 issues of this. That's important to note. Some fun things to talk about Crystar in just a second once we get past our cast of characters. I mentioned Ricardo Villamonte. He is the penciler for this. And again, not a lot available on him other than he was born... he was born in Peru, and he drew for Marvel and DC. He drew for, did the series Beowulf Dragon Slayer, and he's also done Spider-Man, and of course, as you know, he did Crystar number 8, so we'll talk about that. Dave Simons has also had a pretty significant run as an inker for both companies. He has worked, he did work for Ghost Rider, Red Sonja, Spider-Man. He passed on in 2009. He passed on from cancer. He also did some storyboards and things like that. He, military guy like me, he was in the Coast Guard, bumped into Frank Robbins and got some formal undergraduate training to be an artist, and then attended the workshops run by John Buscema and others in order to do what he did. So that's Dave Simons in a nutshell. I mentioned the other artists, or the other people on the book, were Janice Chang, who I mentioned, another New Yorker, of course, and Andy Yankus. Andy Yankus actually has a pretty interesting history. Let me call his up real quick because I just don't have it memorized. I should, but I'll do that another time. I swear I'll memorize it later. Let me see where I put Andy here. Hi, I'm vamping. Anyway, he also has I don't have it. Oh, here it is. Yeah, he worked on Alpha Flight #1, which I thought was great. But he said he colored almost every Alpha Flight issue for Marvel, and he had a tremendous history of run in other areas. So this book is great looking as well. So Crystar, if you don't know, Crystar came from Marvel wanting to create a toy line, and they actually created the toys first. And if you're watching the video, I'm showing one of the toys now. It's actually like you can see through. It's like Crystal Pepsi, but as a toy. And you could see how they had all these things. But they created the toys. They created the line of toys, and then the comic came later. And there was some folks who wondered whether or not that this was the toy came first, and then Marvel licensed to do the toys. No, Marvel had it all in the bag. And it ran for about 11 issues, and it wasn't as popular as, say, ROM, because ROM still gets a lot of run even now. A lot of people look back at ROM very fondly, but this one not as fondly. I kind of like Crystar, and I was going through this issue. I was noticing how very Conan it was like, and it's Crystar going off and trying to rally the troops and doing some things with the families of the galaxy, and then there's a pretty good battle in the middle of the book. But it's kind of all about the history and things like that. The art inside is rich. It's great. It's very much of the style of Paul Gulacy and Al Williamson and some of the others that I really liked in the 80s. Very detailed, lots of great character looks. Of course, the colors in the books are 80s, so very much for color, but great looking inks too. Some really dynamic inks on the pages, and so on and so forth. But the comic never really took off, and the toys never really took off in the same way that, well, I guess Crystal Pepsi never took off, but we know how that goes. And but I really like this. I think they kind of put their back into this book, and they really did some good things, especially toward the end. There's a great on page, what page is this? 19? 19, there's a great full panel page. And Crystar is getting ready to battle this lizard-like animal, but Crystar is in human form at this point. He hasn't crystallized. And then they battle this thing and get on. So pretty cool. Pretty good stuff. Should it belong to the dollar bin? Nah, I think there's great stuff in here. This is one of those that should be more than $1. But, that's always beauty in the eye of the beholder, that kind of thing. But this issue ran 22 pages and was 60 cents in July of 1984. 60 cents. I still remember it was not too far after that when comics eventually went to $1, and now they're like $4. But I'm not one of those guys who is like, oh, it should always be 60 cents. No, I mean, printing costs go up. You got to pay artists. You got to pay everybody. But 60 cents just seems so unheard of, and it's got the Comics Code Authority right on the cover. Some of the better ads in this one, a Huffy dirt bike ad, which is fantastic. The motto is, crank up the power of Pro Thunder, bro. I think this one has yes, it does. This has my favorite Marvel Comics group checklist, and they drew this sort of bro Thor, and it looks like Thor. It's got the blonde hair. It's got half of his helmet. It's got sort of his vest, but then the vest has all these bees all over it. I think some of you know what I'm talking about. I'm showing it on the video right now, but it's the Marvel Comics Group Checklist and Price by Robert Bell from Coral Springs, Florida. Box, what is it? 8326. So yeah, it's that was one of my favorite ads, and I when I started the podcast, I'm like, I'm going to talk about the ads too, because that ad was one of my favorites. A Mile High Comics ad. I think they finally went out of business a few years ago, which is sad. I remember seeing them at Comic-Con the first time I went in San Diego. And then, let's see, T-shirt ad. A Call the Conqueror ad. Yeah, buddy. And then the Funhouse ad in Newark, New Jersey. If you can see this on the video, this is fantastic. Anything you want for 88 cents. Look at all you get. That's all stuff you can get at a swap meet now for like $2. Or maybe that's all like dollar store stuff, but you get to tear this out, and for 88 cents you got to order that stuff and send it off to New Jersey and feel like you were being riparian in the deal there. I know what riparian means, by the way. I know it doesn't mean that, but it's fun to use. There's a Great Bill Sienkiewicz Power Man and Iron Fist ad in here. That was a good one. I remember that. And a few, Jim Shooter signed it because he was the editor-in-chief back then. And the letter column was called Crystal Vision. So Crystar was Crystar number 8, July of 1984. Good book. I don't think that one should have went in the dollar bin, but I'm glad it did because I'm glad I picked it up. The final book worthy of a review. Now, this one surprised me. I didn't even know I had this one in there. It must have came in like a grab bag pack of comics, and I just threw it in the long box and hadn't gotten to it yet. But this was a surprise. This is Ghost Rider number 19. This was, I think, Ghost Rider's second run. And this one is oh, you know what? I forgot to tell you what happened in 1984 with Crystar before I move on to that. Because I want to do that. I want to make sure I tell you what were the significant things in July of 1984. For Crystar, believe it or not, in July of 1984, Liechtenstein was the last European country to grant women the right to vote in 1984. Now, I mean, Liechtenstein's about as big as my backyard, and I've been there, and it's a lovely country, but it was just weird to hear that. Metallica released Ride the Lightning, which was, I think pretty much everyone agrees that was the album just before they sold out with the Black Album, or where everybody thinks they sold out, whatever. And then the other thing that happened that was it hit really close to home for me because I lived in San Diego was the San Ysidro McDonald's massacre. I think 26 people were killed. And to me, that was the first of the big shootings to happen in the United States, where someone walked in with an AR-15 and started shooting up buildings. And that was one of the first ones to do it. So that was, anyway, that was to the July 1984 stuff that goes with Crystar. All right, moving on. Break. On to Ghost Rider number 19. Again, this is the second edition. Wow. This is a heavy-hitting issue, and I didn't realize all the folks who worked on this issue, but let me tell you who they are. They are Mark Texeira. He did the art, which I was like, what? And, well, I can't wait to talk to you about this. But, yeah, Mark Texeira. Howard Mackey did the writing. Howard Mackey has a pretty fantastic history of writing with both books. He's done some significant stuff that I've really enjoyed. And when I was reading back through his bio of things that he'd done, I was like, oh, yeah, Howard Mackey for sure. He's worked almost exclusively for Marvel and on this version of Ghost Rider. And he's another New Yorker, Cypress Hill, Brooklyn. And he started revamping the Ghost Rider character, but he's worked on Amazing Spider-Man. He's worked on X Factor. He's done some Wolverine and Gambit and Rogue. So he's done some great stuff. And he also worked on the second wave of the New 52, which I remember buying some of the New 52 comics. And I still have them, but they're probably not worth much. Janice Chang did this one, as I mentioned before. And then I'm trying to remember who the other ones for this were, because in the book they don't have their full names, so I had to look them up. It's very strange. Let me see here. La la la. I said Mark Texeira, Janice Chang, Gregory Wright is I believe he was the colorist for this one, right? So he was also a colorist on Spider-Man, Defenders, Fantastic Four, Deathlock. I still got Crystar up on the video here. Let me change that for everybody. There you go. There's Ghost Rider. Fantastic Four, Deathlock, Silver Sable, and others. He's a Pennsylvanian, actually. Went to film school in New York and caught a break with Marvel in that way. And then finally, the other one that I mentioned for this issue was... Again, I don't have full names, so I'm sorry I'm vamping a little bit here as I look through the names. That was... I said Gregory Wright. I said Howard Mackey. I guess that's it. I think someone named Chase did the lettering, and DeFalco was the editor on this one. The thing that jumps out at you on this one, well, first, this is the book is Ghost Rider battling with Mephisto, or not Mephisto. He's battling with not Mephisto, Zodiac. The Zodiac killer is on the loose, and Mephisto comes to someone who wants to end their life in sort of a suicide opening, and recruits him to be a minion and go fight Ghost Rider, which is essentially what happens. And so when Mephisto figures out what's going on, he tells Zodiac, when Zodiac figures out what's going on, he does all that, figures it out. There's a lovely family scene in the middle with Kevin Deitch, the Ghost Rider, and Danny Ketch. Why did I say Kevin Deitch? What? It's whatever. The Danny Ketch version of Ghost Rider, and this person that sort of gave that Ghost Rider hangs off the bridge at the beginning, has to go into Zodiac, and they do a thing from Chinatown, which is one of my favorite films, and then Ghost Rider comes in, and he's going to battle Zodiac, and this minion is sent after Ghost Rider, and there's this great battle, and it's actually really well written. Some great passages here. I've always been a big fan of Ghost Rider, despite the Nicolas Cage movie. I know a few people are. Ghost Rider is a great book, and I think there's a lot to be said for it. But I think the thing that really bowled me over was Texeira's artwork. So you have Mark Texeira, who's the comic book artist, who is from New York City. He's a fine artist. Based on his Wikipedia page, it doesn't look like he's done any comics for a while, but I may be wrong on that. And then you have Mark Teixeira, who is the New York Yankees baseball player. And I think both are Portuguese names. I'm part Portuguese, but I'll look into that. I think they're both right. But Texeira's art in this is significantly good. I mean, the opening panels are fantastic. And then when you get to the page 3 splash page, from an artistic point of view, I'm just in awe of what he's accomplished here. It's really beautiful. It's Ghost Rider riding on the piping of the Brooklyn Bridge, carrying this guy who later becomes a sort of a foil for, not a foil, but an underling for Zodiac. He's got him on a chain, and it's the Dark Knight sort of hanging off the building trope that we've seen many times before. But the way that Texeira draws this is phenomenal, and his Mephisto is on page 2, looks amazingly like Tim Curry's Devil from Legend, the movie Legend, the one with Tom Cruise and Mia Sara. And then even on page 4, there's this brilliant close-up shot of Ghost Rider facing off with this sort of minion who's going to go work for. It's the line work is unbelievable. It's amazing, and so you get into the book, and again, there's just so many great pieces that Texeira does. I mean, this is really, really great-looking work, and the colors are outstanding. They go so well with it. The line work is startlingly good, and the way he changes it up between the more superheroes, supernatural scenes and the family scenes is just wonderful. They're much cleaner with the family. Just they're much brighter. But with the Ghost Rider and some of the others, they're much more gritty, and the action scenes are flowing, and there's so much wonderful motion to it, and things that I just wish I could achieve when I'm drawing Vorpal and working on the breakdowns and things like that. Just really wonderful. And it goes throughout the book. And then when you get to, I believe it's pages, I can't see the page. It's like page 17. There's a great top panel with Ghost Rider whacking a dude. It's fantastic. And then another one on page, I think it's page 18, where he's punching a guy. I mean, Texeira's artwork is just brilliant. I mean, it's stupid brilliant. It's amazing. This face that's on page, I think 20, is just unbelievable. A great shot. I'm going to show this one on the video of Zodiac holding a weapon and just saying, "I'm going to end it for you." It's beautiful. I mean, it's just staggeringly beautiful work. And then the actual shot, and then on and on. This is a great book, and it should not be in the dollar bin. I mean, this is quality comic book work. Obviously, it didn't hit any significant high points or low points, I guess, for anybody, and that's why it ended up there. It's not in any collector's trick bag, but it's pretty darn good. I mean, again, I'm glad I found it, and glad got this wonderful art by Mark Texeira to be able to look at it, and so on and so forth. I mean, it's not perfect. There's some kind of goofy parts of the story, and but whatever. I mean, it's just when I started doing the work for the show this week, I was like, this is a great looking book, and I'm probably gonna go back and keep this one a little more in the forefront of the box. It looks great. So that's, would I put this in the dollar bin? No. Keep Ghost Rider, November 91. 91. I said 93 was the other one, and they're so close. I don't know. 91. Keep this one nearby. This is a great issue. So some of the ads in this one, there is a Sega Genesis ad. Woohoo! Sonic the Hedgehog's in there. X-Men action figures from Toys R Us, now also out of business. Let's see, what else do we have? Some Marvel t-shirts. I remember these t-shirts were great because these were some of the first full frontal t-shirts. Like, they had the design on the sleeves and on all sides. They weren't just confined to one area. So I remember that now from that. Here is, which one is this? Oh, American Comics and Entertainment in Gainesville, Virginia. I remember that one very well. Let's see. What other ads do we have here? Oh, this is the one I wanted to talk to you about. So there is a double spread, a double truck as we call it in the printing industry, for a 900 number to play X-Men Battle. So what you did is you dialed 1-900 numbers. Some of you may be too young to remember this, but you used to call 900 numbers and do naughty things for like $6 an hour. But here, you could call 900 number and you could have the X-Men Battle Magneto. And so if you pressed 1, between 2 and 4 seconds, Wolverine would slice through any surface with his adamantium claws. You press 2, Iceman would shoot Sub-Zero cold blasts between 1 and 3 seconds. You press 3, and Cyclops would shoot optic force blasts. And you press 4, and of course Banshee would vanquish enemies with his sonic scream. And you could claim prize. So what you do is you print your choice of cover along with your name, address, and phone number on a 3x5 card. You'd send it to Marvel Comics. And if your phone number doesn't match the prize claim number, you will be disqualified. Now here's the trick. The charge for each call was $1.75 for the first minute and 75 cents for each minute thereafter. And the maximum length of a call was 4 minutes. So you really had to work out your battles in 4 minutes. There were other 900 numbers where all those naughty things where you were... It was like the Pornhub of the telephone industry. I mean, I'll just be point blank on it. Anyway, it's a great ad. A 900 number to battle Magneto. But it's not like we don't do crazy stuff now. Pay-for-play video games, basically the same thing. Bullpen Bulletins, Stan's Soapbox. I don't want to see what he talked about here. And that's about it for ads. The Ghost Rider letter column was called Easy Writers. And so nothing significant in the letters. I may introduce a letters column in the upcoming editions of the podcast. All right, that's it. 3 comics came out of my Dollar Reads box. They were, in order, Darkstars number 4, Crystar, Crystal Warrior number 8, and Ghost Rider number 19. That's the second run. Ghost Rider 19 by far was the big surprise this time with Mark Texeira art and the story and everything else. So there it is. We broke our cherry with the first of many to come of Dollar Box Reads. I'll be right back.